Welcome, everybody. Today is July 12th, 2022. Welcome to the OpenSearch community meeting. Anyways, thanks for coming. Today is a special day because it is the birthday of OpenSearch, although technically it is the anniversary of our birthday. Apparently, we have some audience members who share that birthday, so congrats to them. It's a cool birthday to share, I think.
That was Lucas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, happy
So
birthday,
thanks,
Lucas.
guys.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind
Happy
me calling
birthday,
you out there.
Lucas.
No,
Yeah.
I mean it's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Announcements. It just says David Tippett. Did I put that there?
Yeah, you did. So just a heads up for everyone, I might be going out here in the next week or so. Going to be having a baby soon. So at some point or another, I'll be off for line for a little bit. But yeah, feel free to reach out to either Nate, Chris, or anyone else in the OpenSearch group in my stead.
Congratulations, David. We've got a couple of awesome announcements.
Yeah, we're excited for you.
Yeah, don't worry about it while you're gone. We got your back. We'll take care of things. And one quick announcement, save the date for OpenSearchCon. That will be happening, hold on, I got too many windows open, September 21st, 2022 in Seattle, Washington at the beautiful Fremont Studios. Still not too late, I believe, to make your presence known. And thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Anyways, that's still happening. We're still looking forward to meeting any and or all of anyone who is interested. No task is too small to share and learn from, and I do encourage anyone, regardless of expertise and or technical depth, to just come and get to know the team and ask questions and be curious. I've got a couple of announcements regarding that. So for these meetings, I think we're going to start changing these to a fortnightly cadence, which a fortnight is 2 weeks for those of you that haven't heard that term before. So we'll have these meetings every 2 weeks. We'll take the open office hours and integrate them into the normal. And then the dates are as posted on Meetup. Other than that, we're just doing these less frequently and incorporating more content into them.
Yeah, and we're always looking for presenters. So if anyone's interested in presenting, reach out. There's a thread on each of the dates in the forum already under the community category. Feel free to add notes there. We'll add you to the agenda. We welcome all. So love to have you present.
Okay, well, I'm going to share just a few things before we open up. Let's see here. So the ingestion survey. So we're curious about how people are ingesting things into their OpenSearch instances. So if anyone just wants to help us learn the pulse of everything, that'd be great. Any and all feedback is welcome. We'd love to hear what's going on there. Another cool announcement is that OpenSearch 2.1 has been released. The release notes are available on the OpenSearch build GitHub. So yeah, that's a big announcement. 2.1 release notes are there. So some multi-term aggregation features, user interface updates, increased zoom levels on the maps, a couple of other features. And one other thing, I believe we have gone live with our YouTube channel. So if you'd care to see Mr. Tippett's lovely face, along with our Maintainer Month special event, that should be available on YouTube.
I think that's
David,
good. Yeah.
Awesome.
You want to talk about your community survey, David?
Yeah, that's fair. So with us changing the cadence, that's more so because that's just what we've seen from the information that we've had on community attendance. So also to kind of assist and facilitate in getting better community meetings, we put together a survey to see why you guys come to these meetings. So Chris just popped that in the chat, but really we're just looking to see, like, why are you here? Are you here because you want to learn more information about OpenSearch? You have questions? You just generally want to stay informed and up to date? So fill out that survey. That way we can kind of personalize and prioritize, the content that's most important to everyone here. Check it out.
Yeah. Maybe you just like hanging out with David and Chris and I. That's also a perfectly good reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so if there's nothing else, let's start some open Q&A. Please don't feel like there's a question that is too simple to ask. I would feel terrible if someone was like, oh, I think this question might not be, I don't want to feel as though I don't know anything by asking this question. That's not what we want here. We want any question that you have is likely something that will help teach others. And that's what we want here. So please don't be shy when asking about whatever you need.
Yeah. Peter just dropped one in the chat. What global state manager would be good for OpenSearch dashboards? He mentioned that Redux is the obvious choice. There's also Jotai, Valido, RxJS. Is anyone on the call familiar with the dashboards enough to talk about a global state manager?
Yeah, I think I have to say that's outside my immediate expertise as well.
I know I've actually worked a little bit with React, but that was quite some time ago. So I'd be curious to hear if anyone has any thoughts or opinions. Also, Peter, is this in reference to something that already exists, or is there an open RFC for this?
Yeah, by the way, I'm Pete Fitzgibbons, AWS
Thank you.
OpenSearch Observability team. That's a
Oh, yeah.
lot of words. I do have an RFC that I put up yesterday-ish that we're looking at. Not on this.
That would be phenomenal. I think Redux is nice because it is like a standard. Like, I mean, so many people have experience with this. I say that, experience is short-lived in kind of the front end space. And I even worked on Redux, 3.5 years ago. So it's still familiar, but
Peter, if you have a link to that RFC, can you share it in the chat?
Don't have an RFC on it yet.
Oh, okay. When you do, go ahead and share it with the community. And then we also have a spot in the forum where you can post those and get more eyes on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and we can even drop a note to some developers in-house and have them respond in there.
Yeah.
Actually, Lucas asked a good follow-up question. What's kind of the role of the global state manager in context of dashboards? Is there currently state management on a global level, or is it all kind of managed here and there, so to speak?
So there's not state management in dashboards, at least not the spirit that we use that name in React. Part of this has to do with the way Angular is constructed, and that most of dashboards is still constructed using some of the Angular philosophy. There's a couple projects that are getting started to de-Angularize OSD, but they're like just getting started. The main issue is this affects plugins and the developer experience around plugins, but it also affects all of dashboard core and basically every possible utility within the browser runtime for dashboard basically is exposed internally through prop drilling. And it makes the code incredibly difficult to understand and to read through. The actual syntax constructs necessary to do this prop drilling in a kind of dynamic fashion is really, really hard to grok. Part of that's due to Angular philosophy, but part of that's just due to the fact that it's prop drilling. And I don't know if anyone on the call is not familiar with what prop drilling is. In a framework like React, the common way to get a value sent down through the DOM, through the HTML nodes, is by passing an attribute into the node in React, and then the renderer resolves all that before it actually pastes the DOM. If you have a nested HTML widget that you want to have an attribute, the naive way to get that attribute into that nested element is to just pass the attribute down and down and down and down and down until you get it to where you want it. That's called prop drilling, and it may be simple in a super simple case where you have one value, But when you get to enterprise grade front ends like ours, where there are dozens of utilities and thousands of values, prop drilling is a disaster. And so anyway, I'm just starting to try and build up some kind of a review of what the current options are and why we may or may not want to choose one or the other to go forth.
Yeah, I'd love to see some comparison as well, because I've had a lot of kind of, I'll say, statefulness issues recently that I've noticed in dashboards where like I'll delete an object or an object gets, partially created, but it still hangs out in my like recents. So that is something I
Right.
think that could be more easily solved if we had, state manager rather than, prop drilling.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, my brain went in a totally different direction there. I was thinking of the index state management plugin, but we're talking about keeping sync with the presentation as well as the backing data, making sure that what's on the screen is what's actually being stored.
So it's weirdly, it's almost not even the backing data. Yes, yes, the index is interrogated at some point to get the metadata for front end. And if you're looking at a visualization screen, of course, the indexes are queried to get the actual index data for whatever the data query on those visualizations is. But the front end itself is constructed in this super dynamic way. And so things like dashboard items like dashboards or observability panel or observability app, or basically any plugin that makes itself an app, is entirely built upon metadata that's just saved in a special index in the backend. It used to be called .cabana. I think that I don't even know if there's a ticket on it, but there's some movement about maybe renaming that default index. There's the project for plugin extensibility, which is like a multi-year kind of thing. And one of the tenets of extensibility is that dashboard metadata may in the future be disconnected from the OpenSearch backend. So the dashboard could be run against a Postgre or even a SQLite or whatever. Would still, and I think that the larger context of that is the idea that dashboard could be connected to not only OpenSearch, but actually raw directed to raw queried to a Prometheus or an S3 or whatever. So part of that enabling dashboard to connect to something other than the actual OpenSearch backend is also making dashboard not depend on OpenSearch for the metadata. So anyway, winding all the way back down.
Yeah. Well, what it sounds like what you're trying to accomplish is useful in a lot of contexts here, because our dashboards component is very, very strong, regardless of where it's getting the data. So if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like you're talking about kind of making dashboards not standalone, but able to present these complex visualizations without an index behind it, but rather just some arbitrary data source.
Mm-hmm. That's the very long-term goal, very long-term.
Yeah, see, I think that's great, because then someone could build their visualization and then share the required data for it. And you wouldn't have to know anything about, ingestion or anything like that. It could just be some kind of, formally or not so formally prepackaged kind of thing, which is cool. So I'm curious to hear if you get headway on this. I'm curious to see how it's going to go. I try to watch the RFCs and the tickets in GitHub, but it's kind of hard to track all of them.
It's on the GitHub somewhere. I'd have to search for it.
Gotcha.
It's just the beginnings of a project. I mean, really the stage that project is in right now is like UX trying to design what the actual customer experience of this would be at all. So future things. But anyway, that all relates to continuing to have front end be constructed in a way where the only way to get metadata into some widget or a plugin is by passing it all the way from the very first startup core all the way down through the tree of modules and DOM into that thing is really hard. And so I'm on a very small amount of time every like week or so to just look into this and see if I can figure out what a good option would be.
Yeah, it brings back some not so fond memories of trying to pass things back and forth in Grease Monkey scripts, because in that regard, you're manipulating the document object model via JavaScript, and it's not always the prettiest, most satisfying kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
So Peter, basically, what you are talking about is to have an option to share any kind of state and visualization of the dashboard with someone else using a link, right? Something like that. Making sure that if you send a link to your friend, then the friend, if the friend opens it, he will see the same place, the same setup of the filters and everything else, and basically the friend will see the chart in the place where you want to see it, something like that. So that the friend will get to the information that is needed.
So
I
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's even deeper than that, though. It's more
Yeah,
so
yeah.
within the page. Yeah, like interpage, like how do different page components talk back and forth to each other? And they use this like global state object to share their state. So if you delete something off the page, it needs a way to remove it from every other portion of the page that might have referenced it on the page. I think maybe that's a high level.
Okay.
Ultimately, that's the most obvious use case. And we have a lot of moving data in the page, as it were, quote unquote, moving data. But for the most part, a lot of this is referential data. The backend OSD server, the node server, has gathered environment and a whole bunch of other stuff and grabbed some meta info off index, and then renders renders a JSON blob onto the page in the first render, and then basically index.js is called on the front end, and that bootstraps the entire module environment, and React and Angular and all those things happen like at page render. So all the services around getting what we called stored objects out of index, which is basically that metadata, or the HTTP module around doing fetch from backends, various backends. And there's just a whole range of things. The parts of the page are presented as services, basically. Making your plugin be an app is actually making a call to the app service that here I'm a plugin and I want to be included as part of the app on the page, and all that gets added together at first render, and then eventually the React render cycle completes and it actually renders with like all your menus on the left hand and all that kind of stuff. But all those things right now have to get passed all the way down through the tree in order to be available, where, I mean, like the number of places where the HTTP module is used is just a few, but it has to get passed down through the tree all the way down every time it's used. So
Gotcha. So rather than just having one, I hate to use the word global, but one shared place for all of that metadata, it sounds like we're making multiple calls to multiple contexts to update data. And it does seem like there's a better way to do that, which would be to have some kind of shared resource for that metadata.
right now there's a module called core system that is basically where the bootstrap happens. And that represents what you're thinking about as global, but core system is basically it's all written entirely imperative. It's all imperative programming. And so any idea of here's a dynamic list of things that need to be like started up or interrogated or whatever, that's all done in imperative loops. It's all done top-down programming the entire way down. And that's where a lot of this in the JavaScript modules, where a lot of this prop drilling stuff is coming from, is because it's all imperative. Something like Redux and even more a couple of the other options separates the state module from the runtime of React. So React does indeed start up in an imperative way because you start up the React runtime on the browser. But once the runtime is running, it turns into an event engine. And everything else then is done declarative style and event handling. So some of the other global state managers, basically they instantiate out of, out of thread from that imperative
Gotcha.
main index run.
Well, it sounds like a pretty
so-
complicated topic.
I'm
Probably gonna ask around, see if I can get some help, because it seems like the perfect kind of thing that we as a community could collaborate on to help see what the options are. So let's pin that for a little bit, and we'll maybe throw up some questions in the community as well as in some of our various resources, and see if we can find at least someone who's been through the same kind of exercise, not necessarily with OpenSearch, but anyways, we're coming up on the half hour here. I wanted to give other people a chance to ask any questions if they had any open questions, or I think we'll probably have to cut ourselves off, but I'm going to stick around after the half hour. I'm sure David and Chris are as well, to help give other people a chance to ask questions.
So I saw one just pop up in the chat. I think it's Yvonne, asks, is it possible to have a feature to update schema on the fly, adding new analyzers without closing and opening indexes or deleting old fields?
I think the answer to that, in my experience so far, this might not be the best way to do it, but if you want to update a schema that's dynamically created, I think you would have to create a static mapping and then re-index into that other index, because you can try to delete fields, but if it's dynamically mapped, the instant that you index that document, it's going to create mappings for those fields unless you explicitly tell it not to do so.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I was just digging into this as well recently, but and I think because of how Lucene works, I do think you have to recreate those indexes, because what happens is as it's ingested, it's taking a certain shape, and you would have to run some sort of workflow to go back through all of those documents previously. So you can create a job and re-index them into new indexes. Maybe either Andrea or Lucas, if you have any other experience that you could share. Yeah, I'm not super familiar though.
Yeah, I think this changes our, sorry guys, it's Andrew. Anyone, this changes our sensitive to data, kind of letters and everything, you have to index most of the times. I don't think it will be possible ever to make it on the fly.
Yeah. I know it would be phenomenal because that would make updates so much easier and allow you to do some really cool stuff. But because we're pinned to Lucene under the hood, I think that would be really challenging. Good question, though.
I do apologize. I did not update the month and day of our next meeting. David and or Chris, do you know that off the top of your head? Next week on Tuesday. Chris with the quick react.
It's an early one. It'll be
Always.
7 a.m. next week.
Rolled a natural 20 on your initiative roll, dude.
Yeah, seriously. Not too bad for East Coast.
Okay, so yeah. One last question. Do you know, is it possible to upload custom plugin in AWS OpenSearch? We did just release a blog article on how to create plugins. I think were it to be me, I would one of our upcoming things is extensibility in OpenSearch, and we might have some changes in the way we're doing plugins. So there's a way to do it as it exists now, but I think when we hit 3.0, I think is where the roadmap puts it. We should have a whole different arrangement for the way plugins work and the way they're enumerated in the product.
I think this might be for the service, though. If the question was for the service, that's a no, or at least for the meantime.
Oh, yes, AWS OpenSearch. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay, well, July 26th for the next one. Same time, 9 a.m. Pacific.
7 a.m.
7 a.m. My apologies. Well, feel free to ask any more questions. I'm going to stick around for a little bit, but as far as the recording goes, I think we can go ahead and call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you, guys. David,
Thank you.
Congrats one more time.
Thank you. And happy birthday, Lucas.
Yeah, happy birthday to everyone involved.
Yeah, thank you.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you all for the time today.
Yeah, thanks for the good question. We appreciate the content.
Mm-hmm.